incredibly notable combat histories to their name, and the fourth was flown by one of Britain's markings it now wears in. That's just taxiing past us here at the control tower. The other Spitfire 5 E602 from Fighter Aviation Engineering completed in excess of 100 missions, including escorting the original B-17 named Memphis Belle back to the United States. This while that Spitfire was in service with number 129 Squadron. And the Hurricane 1 there, R4118. Well, that aircraft, during the Battle of Britain, flew 49 sorties out of Croydon, in service with number 605 County of Warwick Squadron, during which it either shot down or damaged 5 Luftwaffe aircraft. The other Spitfire, meanwhile, the very rare Mark 8C, was delivered to the first of its RAF units by a female air transport auxiliary pilot named Mary Wilkins, later Mary Ellis, who on numerous occasions before her death was reunited with sequence. We had Nick Smith in the Fighter Collections Spitfire 5, Gabriel Barton in the Fighter Aviation Engineering Spitfire 5, Martin Overall in the Mark 8 Spitfire owned by Max Alpha Aviation, and lastly James Brown, the founder of Hurricane Heritage, which now owns this Hurricane in the Mark 1 R4118. Thank you to all of them. Not the last Hurricane we'll be seeing on today's programme. We have 3 more that will be performing for us later, but now something very new and very different for the airshow circuit in 2023. Extra the temperatures endured by the tailplane and containment of turbines in case of a rotor burst, and of course all the structural analyses as well. But there's Rich going straight into his display on the knife edge at very low level. Extraordinary, isn't it? It was Eddie who designed this new wing with enormous ailerons and a significantly increased wing area to give the Pitts, which already has an amazing rate of roll, an even better one, and improved handling at some of the lower ends of the speed range. And Rich joked with Eddie that they can just bolt 2 jet turbines to a pit and fly it after a weekend's work. Well, it proved to be a little more than a weekend's work, but the result has absolutely proved to be just what Rich and Eddie hoped it would be. A unique aircraft on the European Airshow circuit, with airshow entertainment in mind. Here we see it describing a very, very wide inverted circle. And now some more vertical rolls. Up to about 1,500 feet. Snap rolls at the apex. A half roll to invert it and pushing into an extremely uncomfortable half outside loop. And now a pair of what Rich called micro loops. Just settling things down for a moment. He does this at various intervals during his display, just to cool things off in readiness for some of the well, that is again just absolutely incredible. And it's not the last time he's going to attempt to bring things to a stop. And there was another. Multiple rolls ending up inverted and pulling through his gate height at the top of that manoeuvre about 1,200 feet. And he's now pulling up gracefully, or so it looks, for a barrel roll, but he's going to snap roll at the apex. preparations for his next manoeuvres. The Bristol Mercury-engined aircraft are rolling off the grass, the Bristol Blenheim and the Gloucester Gladiator. But now for a high power upward spiral. Setting up now for a knife edge pass, which should give a very good view of the colour scheme, including the logos of his sponsors, the Sabio Group, who support him in all of his activities. And again, bringing it down to his minimum display height. Blenheim here was one of the prime RAF frontline aircraft when war was declared against Germany in September 1939. In fact, on the 3rd of September, the day war broke out, more Blenheims were in RAF service, nearly 1,100 of them, than any other type. And the earliest RAF actions of World War II involved Mark IV Blenheims. The one we see here is in Mark 1F fighter configuration. The number 139 Squadron Blenheim, flying out of RAF Witton near Huntingdon on a reconnaissance sortie by Flying Officer Macpherson, became the first British aircraft to overfly Germany after the start of World War II. And there's a nice symmetry here in seeing the Blenheim in the same show as we've seen the Lockheed 12A Electra Junior in earlier on, because once again you can trace the line through from the covert operations of the Lockheed 12 and of another aircraft type that we're shortly to see represented in the display, through to the RAF then assuming the reconnaissance role over Germany once war broke out. first Bomber Command raid of hostilities came the following day, the 4th of September 1939. Aircraft from RAF Wattisham in Suffolk attacked the German fleet in port at Wilhelmshaven. Their losses were appalling, and it wasn't the last time that that could be said about operations by Bristol Blenheims, because an aircraft that had been extremely fast only 2 or 3 years before was now highly vulnerable to enemy fighters. And in all the theatres they flew, fought on heroically. It's an aircraft that has a little bit of a Duxford connection. They were briefly based here in Mark 1F fighter form, like we see here, with number 222 Squadron, protecting Channel shipping. That unit then converted to Spitfire. The Bristol Gladiator. I was fascinated to see this aircraft taking off as Rich Goodwin was hovering the jet pits above it, because there's a certain design similarity between the Standard, as opposed to Rich's very modified pit special, and the Gladiator, a close coupled biplane for very different purposes, of course. But you can see what I mean if you were to see a standard example of a pit. This aircraft was the first RAF fighter to enter service with an enclosed cockpit, but perhaps more pertinently, it was the RAF's last new biplane fighter. It was only bought as an interim measure, pending development of the new monoplanes, the Hurricanes and the Spitfires. Once again, as with the Blenheim, Gladiator crews flew significantly against the odds. The most famous exploits are those of the Hal Far fighter flight at Hal Far in Malta, a flight of Sea Gladiators in truth not just the famous 3 that later became known largely for propaganda purposes by the names Faith, Hope and Charity. Nonetheless, Gladiators on the Mediterranean island put up a really dogged defence during 1940. But they were admittedly more effective against the biplanes that the Italians were still flying in that theatre than against the more modern German and Italian monoplanes. This aircraft restored it to fly, and it took to the air in 2008, made its public debut here 5 years later. But it's displaying today, and this is its last pass, for the first time since 2017. It was in that year. Company with 2 other rather well-known names, Clyde Cessna and Lloyd Stearman. But then in 1932 he set up his own company, Beechcraft, and with his designer Ted Wells, whom he brought across from Travel Air, they conceived the Model 17, a fast executive biplane, as their first design. It was a bit of a gamble at a time when the Great Depression had very much taken hold, coming just 3 years after the Wall Street crash. But Beech saw the potential. The 2-seat Hurricane now rolling off the grass, incidentally. This design became forever known as the Staggerwing, the name coined as a nickname, never officially, when it first appeared in public. This is because the upper wing, as you'll see very prototype, fixed undercarriage. They then changed it to a retractable one, which already improved this aeroplane's already outstanding aerodynamics, giving it very clean surfaces and a very sleek outline. A was for 1,000 miles of space. Well, all of that was achieved on this aircraft, the Beech D17S, and here running in over the motorway, we've got two of them. Flew in November 1932. Now, if you consider that the house in the States at the time cost somewhere around $6,000, this aircraft was not cheap. The base model cost $14,000 when it first came out. Perhaps unsurprisingly, therefore, the sales were quite slow to pick up, but soon the Staggerwing dominated the market. One of its, on that occasion, really were very useful indeed. Now, the two aircraft we've got here both have their own excellent histories. The one in the lead, in the military camouflage scheme, is owned by Peter Kuipers and is based at Leopoldsburg in Belgium. It was produced for the US Army Air Forces, and it was supplied. It also served with the Royal Navy's station flight at Heston, where the Lockheed 12A of fighter aviation engineering that we had earlier on was also based. Although, of course, they weren't ever there at the same time, because the Lockheed was returned to the USA after it was damaged in 1940, and this Staggerwing dates from 1944. It's now painted as the personal aircraft of His Royal Highness Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, who operated a Staggerwing while he was exiled in London from 1941 to 45. During the Luftwaffe's Operation Botenplatte raid on Evere airfield near Brussels on the 1st of January 1945. But this aircraft has long been in these colours for very many years while it was operated by the great warbird collector Rolf Lamplauw, and it's been retained in these markings in the ownership of, appropriately enough, Dutchman Peter Kuipers. Landing from Peter Kuipers in his own Staggerwing, and Nigel Wilson flying the maroon one owned by Geoffrey Lynch. As I mentioned a little while ago, only one of our three Hurricanes able to take off. He'll be flying it tomorrow. And so he was after a suitable display and touring aeroplane. This absolutely fitted the bill, and it was returned to airworthiness for him by Transal Aero Services at Midden-Zeeland in the Netherlands, and it flew again towards the end of 2021 after many years on the ground, but in perfect condition. The second aircraft here, meanwhile, was also built for the US Army Air Forces. After World War II, it went off Hurricane, flying anywhere in the world. Should be very short. An aircraft that's painted as a Hurry Bomber version of the Hurricane, a Mark II flown by 174 Squadron at Manston in Kent in 1942, which served during the disastrous Allied amphibious landings in Dieppe that year. Newly converted by the type experts, Hawker Restorations, at their new facilities at and running in from the left to start its display, the two-seat Hurricane.